Good evening. My name is Orville Toller. I'm coming to you today from my home in southern Ohio, where you can't see off camera. It's still currently under some sort of construction. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Dr. John Dewey. John Dewey was born in Burlington, Vermont, and he studied at the University of Vermont, where he received his undergraduate degree. He taught school for a few years until he went to Johns Hopkins University to receive his doctorate. From there, he went to the University of Michigan and taught for 4 years. He even did 1 year stint at the University of Minnesota. After that, he landed at the University of Chicago. So Dr. Dewey, what was his philosophical contribution to education? Well, he was a pragmatic. He believed that in the education system in the United States that we had it wrong, that traditional education was out of date, that it was not a good learning environment to sit young learners, young students in rows and lecture them and tell them the answers that they're supposed to memorize. And those answers were absolute fact and unchanging. So how did he contribute to the change? Well, he developed a 3-step process, a problem-based learning solution, if you will. In contrast to the traditional classroom environment that Dr. Dewey saw young learners learning in, he believed that he should cast out all of the rigid data that was unchanged for a more realistic, real-world approach, where students learn based on experience and then reflection upon that experience. So life experience is where you get your real education. Now, Dr. Dewey's principles of learning were clear in his problem-based approach to learning. He believed that students should identify and intellectualize a very specific problem, and the teacher was there to control the inquiry by getting students to develop a logical hypothesis. And then the teacher would finally encourage the students to refine their theories and continuously redefine their concepts as they learned, as their learning would unfold. So what he was saying is basically like this wall behind me. I'm fond of this wall. Like I said, we're kind of in a construction process. I'm fond of this wall because all 3 of my sons helped me build this when we started the complete reconstruction of our home for my wife. Well, this wall, the feature piece behind it, the board's like this. This board was an old board that was old wood, an old problem for somebody else, and we reclaimed it. We refinished it. We stained it. We made our cuts, and we put it on the wall. But if we approach these boards just like the traditional American education system before Dr. Dewey redefined it, we would take this board, we tear it off the wall, we throw it away, and put a brand new board up on the wall that looked brand new. Well, that doesn't mean that we actually solved the problem. All we did was remove the old problem and put up something that was going to age and become a new problem. Instead of looking at the problem in the form that it is and developing an idea of what we could do to transform this old problem into something that's new. Well, that's experience. Knowing how to cut the board and how to adjust the cut and have the concept of blade thickness so we can make this cut fit the way that we want it. That is the education that John Dewey was talking about. Now, John Dewey came into fame around 1899. That's when he published a pamphlet known as School and Society. In this educational philosophy pamphlet, piece of literature took the classroom of that day in the late 19th century, early 20th century, to task for the structure of learning that it placed students in. Dr. Dewey, like I said before, did not like the structure where we transmitted data that was unchanged and handed it down as simple fact, unchanging fact to students, and he thought that that was wrong. So he took to task that bureaucratic system that was in place, and he brought new ideas of how education would be, fresh ideas. And that would be using experience that the young learners would have in a controlled environment, to where they would have to use their brain to come up with the idea or the solution. Now, one thing that Dr. Dewey did do was he thought that working with your hands in wood and metal, learning to cook and sew, he saw a value in that type of learning. Now, he did not go as far as saying that we should have vocational learning, like what we do have in many areas now, especially the rural areas like what I live in. But he did see the value in learning how to cook and sew and work with wood as, say, a carpenter, or work with metal, maybe people that work with sheet metal inside of an the auto industry. He saw that could benefit people, so he did champion that. But he did not think that sitting people in a classroom side by side was the way to do it. He thought that was an antiquated and outdated system. And I believe he was right. Now, what would John Dewey think about the educational system that we have today? I believe, this is my opinion, that he would say we've returned to the traditional education system. I don't think that he would like the fact that we put students in desks, line them up, and prepare them for standardized tests, and we rate them side by side with one another on a gradient scale to see what place they land within the state's standardized testing system. I believe that he would say that is a return to old form and a step back in our educational system. So, I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video, and I hope that you learned a little bit about Dr. John Dewey in the way that he was able to influence the educational system that we have in Western civilization today. Though it has changed, and we have seen a return somewhat to a traditional education system, you cannot deny the outcomes of Dr. Dewey's research and his educational philosophy. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for taking your time to listen to what I have to say. It is greatly appreciated, and God bless.